rentals because it's like, do you want to make more money or do you want to make less money? And so, yeah, with short-term rentals, you can make like 10 to 15 times more the cash flow. Like the industry standard for monthly cash flow with long-term rentals is 200. And that number has actually decreased a lot because of high interest rates and everything's more expensive. But with short-term rentals, our goal is to generate $2,000 a month of profit per short-term rental, whether you own it or whether you sublease it. So it's just about 10x. Hey everyone, welcome back to the S Factor. My name is Jorge Contreras, and I teach people how to create time, location, and financial freedom by starting their Airbnb empires without owning real estate. My S Factor is do what you can with what you have where you are. Too many people get caught up in analysis paralysis, and my philosophy is take action and make adjustments as needed. Thank you.
Hello, Jorge. Welcome to the S Factor. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. Super excited to be here with you, Tarek. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for your time. It's going to be a very exciting episode. We're going to be talking about Airbnb, short-term rentals, your business, your story. So let's get started. I think that you've been investing for quite a bit of time, right? So I think your first investment was like about 10 years or so ago. So how did you start investing in real estate?
Yeah, great question. So I started investing in 2012. I still remember the date. I closed on my first property on May 23rd, 2012. And at the time, it was a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom, single family, 2-story home. And I knew that I wanted to get into real estate because a few years prior in 2008, I was a mortgage banker and a mortgage lender at Bank of America. And I sort of had like my own version of a podcast back then, Tarek, without knowing that it was a podcast, just because I would sit with entrepreneurs right across from me in my cubicle, and we'd talk about their business and their goals and what they wanted to do. And so I got to learn a lot from them. Never really seeing it as like mentorship or as, having them as role models or like a podcast. It was just, my work. And I remember thinking to myself one day, wow, I want to be able to be an investor someday. And so sure enough, in 2012, that's when I purchased my first piece of real estate.
All right, perfect. So that's how you got started. Maybe walk us through how you actually scaled things up from there.
So at that point, I knew how to get my first property, right? I used a program that's very common called an FHA, which is only 3.5% down. But beyond that, I didn't know how to continue to grow and scale my portfolio. So I actually became a student at the Rich Dad Poor Dad company. And that's where I had a millionaire mentor and other millionaire mentors. And I learned multiple strategies about real estate investing. And that's really where I got my start that allowed me to scale within 2 years of that education and really executing and making this my one thing, going all in. My net worth exceeded $1 million.
Wow, that's awesome. So what's the portfolio like now?
So right now we have a portfolio of 18 properties. There's 8 properties that we own, 7 that we sublease, and 3 that we manage. And I am also working on 2 other projects that are developments. So one is a ground up 3-unit new construction, and the other one is a 12-unit new construction. So we're scaling up pretty quickly and implementing multiple strategies.
And which areas are these in?
So these properties are all in Southern California. We're like in 8 different cities, but all in Southern California.
Okay, perfect. And what is the ratio between long-term rentals or short-term rentals, or are they all short-term rentals?
Yeah, all of my properties 100% right now are short-term rentals. With some of those developments, there are some limitations where if there's a building, depending on the city, you may be able to only do like 1 or 2 as short-term rentals. So with those larger developments that are multifamily, it will be a combination of short-term and long-term and mid-term rentals as well.
Okay, perfect. So early on in the game, you kind of decided that, you know what, I'm going to go with the short-term rental approach.
Right.
And why was that?
So the reason I actually decided to go with the short-term rental approach is I actually had a student back then that I had for my previous business, and she had a couple units listed as short-term rentals. So she reaches out to me in 2016 to rec, and she says, Jorge, I am making 3.5 times what I was making for my long-term rentals. And at the time, I only had my first property, but I was doing long-term rentals with the 3 bedrooms. And I was like, wow, that sounds promising. Let me give it a shot. So in early 2017, I had some units that were going to be vacant. And so I went ahead and tried it. And sure enough, I started getting 3x with short-term rentals that what I was getting from long-term rentals. And every time I, acquired a new property, whether it was a purchase or a sublease, I was able to replicate those numbers. And so that's why right now I don't have any long-term rentals, because it's like, do you want to make more money or do you want to make less money? And so, yeah, with short-term rentals, you can make like 10 to 15 times more the cash flow. Like the industry standard for monthly cash flow with long-term rentals is 200. And that number has actually decreased a lot because of high interest rates and everything's more expensive. But with short-term rentals, our goal is to generate $2,000 a month of profit per short-term rental, whether you own it or whether you sublease it. So it's just about 10x.
Okay, excellent. So you mentioned a number there, 10x. That's a lot. So in terms of just putting it into perspective, in terms of actual hard numbers, are you able to share some hard numbers with us in terms of gross revenue and stuff?
Definitely. So we're doing about 150 gross revenue right now a month, and that translates to about 30,000 a month of net profit after all expenses, rent, mortgages, utilities, cleaning, replenishables, management, just everything.
Okay, perfect. So share with us one of the key aspects to making this work is, I believe, is the pricing strategy. Yeah. So do you follow a particular system? Do you use any kind of tools when it comes to setting your prices?
Yeah, as far as pricing, I call it the 10, 20, 30 model. It's pretty straightforward. The goal at 10 days is to break even, so your rent or mortgage to be covered. The goal at 20 days is to double your rent or mortgage, and the goal at 30 days is to, triple. For example, if your rent or mortgage payment is, say, $4,000 a month, then we want to be able to acquire, if the rent or mortgage is $4,000 a month, we want to be able to charge $400 a night, right? Which would allow us to hit those targets. And so that's why you have to make sure you have the right types of properties in the right location. And even the property itself, like it needs to be renovated. It has to have enough people to host like at least 8 to 12 people, because then it's a no-brainer, right? If you have a group of 12 people who are traveling to a certain location, if they were going to stay at a hotel, they're going to pay upwards of $1,000 to $1,500 a night. So paying $400 a night is actually a pretty good deal for that large of a group. And that's what allows us to hit those numbers.
Okay, perfect. So I think one of the key things as well is actually selecting the right kind of properties, right?
Yes.
So what kind of properties are you mostly looking into, or the properties that you have already? What made you go for those?
Yeah, so I have a business model, and I'll share with you guys, that has worked really good to hit these types of targets. So first, we go for a single family home, right? I think apartments and townhomes are really good as well. They do require less capital, and the profit margins are also less. And that's a great place to start for someone who has limited capital. But if you have the additional financing, going for larger single family homes where you could host large groups of people will give you a better return on investment. So my business model is I go for single family homes that are 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, at minimum 1,100 square feet. Ideally, the more the better. Like if I can get 2,000 square feet, that's like a really good sweet spot. And I also want to make sure that I have great amenities. So most of my properties, almost all of them, have a pool and a game room. And maybe 2 of them also have a jacuzzi in addition to a pool and a game room. And when we look at why people stay at Airbnbs, right, there's really 2 main reasons. One is, let's say you're going to, Tony Robbins, conference. You're going to go for some self-development training, and maybe it's in a downtown location. Well, a lot of people will stay at an Airbnb because it's maybe 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 miles from the event. So they're not going to spend a lot of time at the Airbnb. They're really just booking it because it's in proximity to where they're going. The second reason people book short-term rentals, Trek, is they want to have a staycation experience where they can have a great time in the home without needing to leave the home. They don't have to necessarily go anywhere. They're just booking it for the experience that they can create in the home. So if you can combine both, if you can acquire a single family home with those great amenities I just mentioned, where you can create a staycation experience, but it can also be in a prime location, like near downtown or the beach, then now you've set yourself up to be, top 1%, be in the top 1% of properties in that area. So that's really what we go for.
Excellent. And that will add a lot of value to anyone who's watching, obviously. So you mentioned the amenities, right? Pool, rec room, etc. So obviously you need to have like a team in place, or you need to have contractors in place for cleaning and such. So, and obviously with Airbnbs, I understand cleaning is a major aspect of its main service, right? So how do you manage that aspect of the business?
So yeah, you're absolutely right. Cleaning is the absolute most important component of running a successful Airbnb, because you could have everything I just mentioned, right? The right property in the right location. But if you have a cleaner that is not doing a good job, your reviews are going to tank. And if you consistently get really bad reviews, Airbnb will suspend your listing a few times. And if you keep getting really bad reviews, they will permanently disable your listing, right? It's never happened to any of mine or any of my students, because we obviously know how to hire and delegate and build the right systems in place, but that is extremely important. I recommend hiring on places like Thumbtack, Yelp, social media, word of mouth, or even using TaskRabbit. Those are like my top 5 locations to find a cleaner. And then typically what we do is we'll create a group chat, whether it's on Slack or on WhatsApp, with whoever's doing the cleaning, the maintenance, the communication, the manager, my virtual assistant, and then myself. And with Slack, it's pretty easy, right? Because you have your workplace and you have a channel name per property. It makes it really easy. If someone has a question for property XYZ, you know that it pertains to that property. But yeah, cleaning is extremely, extremely important when it comes to operating a successful business with short-term rentals.
Okay, perfect. So I want to add a little bit of value to anyone who's looking to get into the Airbnb game in 2023. So could you give us sort of like a high level overview of step-by-step process of how one should actually consider when they're trying to get into the Airbnb game?
Absolutely. So there's 3 steps to starting a successful Airbnb business. It's data, regulation, and contract. So let's go over the data first. You want to make data-driven decisions. A lot of people are concerned about operating in an area where the market is saturated. The way we prevent that is we use softwares like AirDNA and MashVisor, which give you comparable numbers to what you could potentially earn. So we have the ability to look at the revenue and occupancy of all Airbnbs anywhere in the world. And this way you can determine if you can double or more whatever you're going to pay in rent. This is how you can determine if it's saturated or not. If you notice that everyone's making around $4,000 to $5,000 and the rents are about $3,800 to $4,000, then you know it's saturated and it's not a good market. You want to make sure you can generate $2 for every dollar that you pay. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the regulation. You want to get in contact with the local building department. You can just go on Google and type building department in the city of, fill in the blank, call that phone number and ask them if you can get a permit in that city. And if you can, great. They'll typically send you the link or the website domain as to where you can begin that permit process. And the third one is the contract, right? You want to make sure you have 2 things in writing from the landlord. One, it should say, your company or your name has permission to use this property as a short-term rental. Your company or your name has permission to change the locks. Those are the 3 most important things, because in all lease agreements, in 100% of lease agreements, Tarek, it says no subleasing allowed when you are intending to live in the property. But of course, when we speak to the landlords about using their properties to run our short-term rental business, now we can add some terminology and change the verbiage to give us permission to actually operate.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And except for the last one, I think the other two would be relevant even if you're buying the property. Correct.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
But as a property owner, though, are there any other extra things that one should be looking out for?
There really isn't. It's really those two things, right? It's can you make double or more whatever your mortgage is going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And two, does the regulation even allow you to operate? Because if you can't have one without the other, right? If the
Mhm.
numbers look great, but you shouldn't operate,
Mm-hmm.
and they're going to shut you down or start fining you because they're not allowed in that area, or maybe they reached the cap on the amount of permits, because a few cities do that. Most don't, but a few do. Again, so you want to make sure the data is good and the regulation is good.
Okay, perfect. So let's talk about the present situation as we are in it today. When you scroll through YouTube or any of these social media platforms, there seems to be a lot of pushback from creators or people, who were promoting Airbnb as a business quite a bit. But now there seems to be some pushback because of certain situations, economic situations and such. So in terms of yourself, have you seen any slowdown in your bookings?
Yeah, there's definitely been a slowdown in Airbnb bookings. There's been a slowdown in everything in pretty much like 99.9 of all industries. So yes, there's definitely been a slowdown in the bookings of Airbnb. However, depending on how you market your property and the types of properties and the location and the amenities and the pricing strategy, some are going to do better than others. Personally, in my portfolio, my lowest occupancy this month right now is like at 53%. But even then, we're still cash flowing. We're still cash flowing even with those numbers. Because remember, with the model that I have, right? If we break even at 10 days, that you're talking about 33% occupancy to break even. Anything above that is profit. So we're not doubling right now like we used to 6 months ago. In some of my properties, and some of them we are, but even without doubling, we're still cash flowing maybe $800 to $1,600, where before it was maybe $2,000 to $2,400. But then some of my other listings that are more in prime locations, like primary cities where it is more expensive to either buy or to rent, those properties are like at 70 to 85% occupancy. I even have two that are in the 90% of occupancy. So I do believe that it has a lot to do with your experience as well. Like I'm sure, both of us know people who have e-commerce businesses and maybe they're struggling, but it's like, well, Amazon's not struggling, right? They just continue to grow and grow and grow. And then there's always going to be some people that are outperforming others because of what they know. And we know how to market to, like, there's 4 types of bookings that will always exist regardless of what's going on in the economy. You have bookings through relocation companies, government bookings. You also have nurses traveling for work, and even corporate bookings, right? So again, these types of bookings, actually, right before this call, I saw a booking that just happened yesterday. I didn't see it till right now. And it's 64 nights for $17,000, right? That averages out to just about $8,000, 8,000 per month. And my rent on that property is $4,700. So we will still make more than $2,000 in profit. And this is for just a little over 2 months, right? And it just came yesterday. And so again, these types of bookings, they all come through the Airbnb platform if you know how to get the right properties in the right location with the right amenities. Essentially, you want to have one of the most attractive and one of the most marketable. If you have one of the most marketable properties, you don't have to do any marketing because the reviews, the visibility, the bookings will speak for themselves.
Right. Got it. And that's a really effective approach that you have. And I like the fact about the 10, 20, and the 30 days. I think that really works well. So one of the other things I think a lot of people would be curious about, especially people who are trying to get into this game, is about funding their first property. Which in most cases will actually be their second property because they might actually own their own home, their principal residence, right? So the thing is that how does one go about funding that second property?
Yeah. Let's talk about the funding. So there's a lot of ways to fund, whether it's your first or even your second property or and beyond. Even it could be your 10th or your 20th. One of the things I learned right at Rich Dad is that wealthy people almost never use their money. They always leverage OPM, right? Other people's money. So I'll give you a couple options that we've used and I personally am using today as well. One of them is the balance transfer promotion, where you can transfer money from a credit card into a checking account. Not to be confused when you're paying off a credit card with another credit card. That's different. This is going from your credit card into your checking account, and you can get a 0% interest for up to 21 months. You do pay a one-time 3, 4, or 5% fee. Typically, it's 3%, but you get 0%. And like, I'll give you an example. If you were to take out 15 grand, let's just use 20 grand, easier number. You take out 20 grand, you transfer it to your checking account. And then once you launch your Airbnb, let's say you're making 2,000 a month of profit, but it all goes back to pay the credit card. After 10 months, the credit card would now be paid off and you never had to use any of your money. Like, you literally just printed money. And so if you could master how to do that, that's going to take you to a whole other level. So that's one. The other one is bringing in a business partner who can actually be like the money partner. Or you can also solicit private money where you pay people, say, a 10% interest on their money annualized. That's another way as well. So there's always a lot of ways that you could leverage other people's time, other people's money, and other people's knowledge.
Okay, perfect. Those are really good points. And one of the final things I guess I would want to know from you is in regards to mindset, because this particular type of business is not necessarily for everyone, because there are a lot of day-to-day challenges. There are, you got to set up your property after let's say you acquire the property, but you got to set it up in the right way so that, the pictures come out good, right? So that, as you said, there are amenities and all that stuff. There will be maintenance issues which will come up because, guests at the end of the day, it's not their own home. So they're not going to treat it as such, right? You have the cleaning and all that stuff. So in terms of mindset, who would you say that this particular business is ideal for?
Yeah, I would say this business is for someone who doesn't want to keep working for someone else for the rest of their life, right? There's a lot of people out there that they went to school, they got 1, 2 degrees, and they're like, man, I did everything right, but now I'm stuck. They're like, I'm 25 or 30, and I don't want to be here until I'm 65. So for those people who are 9-to-5ers who want to, become financially free. They want to build their own last name, their own empire. That's who this is for. I feel like this is actually the perfect side hustle for someone who's going from 9-to-5 to entrepreneurship, who's going from 9-to-5, who wants to build their own business so that they can ultimately get, and it's not, obviously the money's great, but even more than the money, you're getting your time and your life back. So you can spend more time with your family, travel, whatever it is that they're passionate about.
Okay, perfect. So on the final note, as you are a very experienced person in this space, going into the rest of 2023, we got higher interest rates. I'm not going to mention the R word. And we got so many other challenges, right? So how do you see 2023 and onto 2024 going for this particular business?
Yeah, the way I see 2023 and beyond for this particular business is I do see rents starting to come down, because anytime they have interest rates super high, everything's more expensive, right? Whether you're paying rent or buying a home or, financing a vehicle, everything is more expensive. So people are naturally spending less money, right? Because it's a credit crunch. So what I believe will happen in 2023 and beyond is interest rates will start to come down, because the interest rate, the government wants to stimulate the economy. They want people to spend more money. Otherwise, it would be really bad if that didn't happen. And they would, so I believe that rents will come down. I believe that prices for purchasing will come down. I believe that interest rates will come down. And obviously it's not going to be drastic, but I believe that every month, or every quarter, we will see those numbers start to come down. And I believe that the number one thing people should do right now, doesn't matter if they want to start a construction business, an Airbnb business, or any type of business, the one thing everybody should be doing right now is finding somebody that they can learn from. Find someone who has the results that you want and start learning from them, because these opportunities, they're already here and they will continue to be in front of us. But if you don't have the knowledge and information to take action, then, again, I always say you wouldn't be able to recognize an opportunity if it hit you on the face, because you don't have the knowledge to know what to do with it. So you must educate yourself so that you are prepared for the opportunities that are coming and that are already here.
Well said, sir. Well said indeed. So Jorge, if people wanted to find you, where would they look?
Yeah, best place is connect with me on my Instagram. There is a ton of fake accounts out there, so make sure it's the one with, I think there's 142 or 143,000 followers, but make sure it's that one, and I only have that one Instagram account.
Yeah, and we're going to link it in the description below. So, don't worry about the fakes. Just go to the real one. All right, sir. Thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. And I wish you all the best for this year and beyond.
Likewise. Take care. Thank you for having me. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks.